Hello and welcome back. This is Sustain at FOSS Backstage conference in Germany, in Berlin, about all the rest of the stuff in open source that isn't directly related to coding, all the meta stuff, not the Facebook stuff. This is actually going to be a different podcast, which is very exciting. This is going to be the Sustain Open Source Design podcast at FOSS Backstage, which I did not see coming. But we have Pablo Ruiz-Múzquiz. I didn't ask how to pronounce your name. Is that good enough?
Good enough.
Okay,
Yeah.
how do you pronounce your name?
Ruiz-Múzquiz.
Excellent. That's really great. I can't roll my R's, so I'm not going to try. But we have Pablo here, and Pablo is working at Kaleidos, which is also, is it a subsidiary of PenPod?
No, it's Kaleidos is the company, PenPod and Tiger are the products.
That's amazing. PenPod is probably the most cited example of we really like this product on the Sustaining Open Source Design podcast. So you're doing something right, which is great. Either that or something wrong because people love complaining about things they actually use. So I don't know which one it is. What do you do there?
I'm the CEO.
That's pretty good. Maybe I should have made a mild insult joke. I feel bad now. Okay, so tell me how that happened. Did you join Kaleidos first? Did you join PenPod first?
So I co-founded Kaleidos back in 2011. At that time, we created the company as a consultancy company.
Cool. In Madrid, right?
In Madrid, in Madrid, in Spain, yes. Still financial crisis, hitting us hard and everything. And we decided to, let's, the company actually, the full name of the company is Kaleidos Open Source.
Why Kaleidos?
Kaleidos, as in kaleidoscope. Yeah. Kaleidos comes from the Greek root, kaleidos, that means of a beautiful shape. Mm. And our motto was beautiful code, Kaleidos, beautiful code. So it was beautiful code, beautiful shape, beautiful form. From beautiful code comes beautiful art, I guess, beautiful software. So it was all about, I guess, beauty in the tech, but also in the art arena. And we were this consultancy company, but we have this incubation thing called Pi Weeks, our personal innovation weeks, every 6 months. And during those Pi Weeks, both in July and in December, we would let the whole company just challenge themselves.
Cool.
For the sake of just for fun, really. And in several locations, we would end up with great products. One of them, the first one was Tiger, which is an open source agile product.
Yep.
And then a few years ago, we started with PenPod. At the time, it was not called PenPod. Perhaps some people in the audience will recognize the name of UXbox.
Yep.
It was a great code name, but it could not sustain the brand, the brand collision there with other products from a company. So UXbox led to PenPod. And we just recently, at the beginning of the pandemic, switched completely from the consultancy business to pure open source product company.
Awesome.
So all in with our products, our IP, our tech, our vision of how technology should impact society, basically.
So there's a lot of them are small, and most of them fail after a few years. So why did this work? And open source doesn't necessarily bring in money. So I'm very confused why you decided to go with open source first.
Well, initially when we co-founded the company in 2011, we would work for other people, other startups, and we would develop big tech for them. So we would get money from those contracts.
Okay.
And then we had enough savings that we could switch to a full open source products company. We took also some investment, and that's where we are at the moment. But we were a successful business from a consultancy perspective, really successful, and we could actually fund our own open source projects. What we didn't expect at the time is that eventually, at some point, we would be doing just that. Like 100% of our activity now is keep building open source products meant for cross-functional teams, basically, right, around the world. So that Tiger is about the lean process, the agile process, and PenPod is about the design process.
Yeah.
It is a risky move for us, but I think it's the right one, especially these days when we believe that there's too much at stake in the sense of how the whole innovation process is now being taken. I mean, if you take apart the innovation process for any tech project, the design, the inception, the design, conceiving something, prototyping something, and eventually designing and building it, does require expertise in design process and in using design prototyping tools. And we didn't really have a professional, up to the task type of tools.
Yeah.
And so back then, 4 years ago, we decided that we needed that. We could not wait any longer. And yeah, let's build this, right? It is not easy because it's not an easy tool to build, a tool like PenPod. It takes a ton of technical challenge, technical talent for the challenge. But we eventually got there, and we just recently released our GA this past month.
That's great. What does GA stand for?
General availability. It's kind of techie name for it's not beta anymore.
Cool, excellent. That's great.
It's official release, official release. Yeah.
Excellent. You mentioned that you're not doing the consulting anymore. You're just focusing on the open source.
Exactly.
You took some investment. Is there any money coming in outside of the investment?
Except from our own savings, no. Although we have some revenue coming from the Taiga project because we have a SaaS that you can pay for it.
Yep.
But no, the investment actually was meant to sustain the development process for a few years before we are relevant enough. Before we're relevant means big footprint basically, and kind of so a bit of thought leadership, But just being relevant is key for us to actually start charging a big corp for some stuff, right? So we are not taking any money. We don't feel it would be the right thing to do. We first need to prove a ton of things. Thankfully, we do have the money to keep us, working without distractions.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess in 2 years, perhaps at the end of 2024, we are recording this March 2023. In less than 2 years, there will be some way of you paying for something, for PenPod. Whether it's an exclusive feature that it's just for you for the big corp. We call that model tax decontroller.
Yep.
Tax decontroller is all about making sure that it is free for everyone as long as there's no restrictions in usage.
Yep.
That you can do whatever you want. You can use all the features. You can use everything. You want to limit that.
Yep.
You probably are a company, and then you have to pay for that.
Yeah. It's like double licensing.
No. It's not about double licensing in the sense that you have like your own fork, like proprietary fork of the code.
Yeah.
Is that if you want to have these features that limit how your users,
got it. Okay.
your teams,
cool.
use the software. Like I won't allow you to do any type of login that you want.
Yeah.
You have to do two-factor authentication.
Yep.
Mandatory, or you won't be able to invite any member of any, in the world. You have to only limit, you can only invite for your team members the ones that have an email address that's valid for us. Or we need some audit trail. Whatever limits the usage of the tool is a configuration, it's a kind of a policy maker thing. And for those features, you have to pay in order for you to use them as an organization that oversees how your company is using, in this case, PenPod or Taiga. And that's what we call tax decontroller.
Cool.
And we will charge as much as we can.
Good. Excellent. I like that.
Because that money goes directly into the open source project that allows everyone else to enjoy complete freedom, right?
Tell me about the size of your team. How many people are working right now?
The whole company is 30. So we have PenPod and Taiga. So that's 50-50. But of course, we have 3 teams.
Cool.
We have 2 product teams, Taiga and PenPod. And then we have the community team.
Yep.
Many of us actually came to this event because we feel it's good. 7 of us. So, but yeah, the company is really tiny compared to this, super big
Adobe,
companies.
Figma,
Yeah, well, of course. 30, just 30, which is also a telling you how amazing, how much talent there is there in just a bunch of people.
Are you all based in Spain?
Yeah, the stage that's really different parts of Spain, but mostly in Madrid because that's where we were born.
Yep.
But yeah, Spain is where 99% of us live.
Random possible aside, Open Collective. I work at Open Source Collective.
Yeah.
Founded by Pia Mancini, Argentinian.
Yeah.
And she also has the same sorts of concepts of let's give back. Let's not try to accumulate wealth in a single hand. Let's try to make sure that we have a community-centered approach. I'm not saying that this is only relevant to Spanish companies, but you feel like there might be a theme there? Or I'm just curious why you decided to do that. Is it an ideological thing or is it a pure business decision?
It's both.
Cool.
It's both. I've been in open source in 1996.
Yep.
So I witnessed back in, let's say, the noughts, like the early noughts, how countries like Spain in particular would have this huge trend in open source. So you had the talent, but also like the ambition to create something cool out of it, contribute, and then intermingle, public administration, private sector, and open source, kind of a hacktivist thing. Not everything succeeded. We also saw that happening in Brazil at the time. Amazing leadership there, and Argentina, and it's like Latin America is big on this, but also in Europe. Basically, so there might be some cultural, ideological thing, but also I think for us, since we wanted to make sure we could make a living out of open source in an ethical way, it's also we want to be right. We want to be right. We want to make some people see that you can have both. You can have the ethical perspective and the epistemological perspective.
Yep.
And it's fine to do that. So I don't know. Open Collective is here actually. I think they're. Well, you're here. You're the reason that there's the logo and the.
We also helped to sponsor the conference.
Yeah, exactly. So, thank you for that. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you for coming. This is great. I love having this space. Yeah, I wear two hats. I'm partly here for Sustain, partly here for Open Source Collective.
That makes sense.
You talked about 2024 opening up money so that you get some feedback, some money back to your investors and some money back to the team. So it's not all just personal savings.
Yeah.
Admirable goal. Makes sense to me. When you talk about community, my question is, how are you going to offload governance and finance to the community as a whole and not just to Kaleidos?
Yeah, exactly. That's huge because we have two challenges here. One is we have to be as generous as possible, like this game theory of being altruistic. It has to work in this case too. So we have to make sure that there is a proper governance model in terms of the community. And that might mean just sharing power, but also sharing the funds, right? So we have some ideas, some quite drafty, but ideas on how to make sure that whatever we will have in terms of funding, it's kind of distributed so that the community can also benefit from that. But I think in the longer term, this is about governance, like as a whole. So that's one challenge. Many other open source companies and open source projects do face.
We're facing the same challenge. So we're facing the same challenge at Open Collective. So we're trying to do exit to community to figure out how do we get the community to have a stake and ownership of everything.
Exactly.
So it's hard.
It's used. Otherwise, you have the communities with the lowercase c.
Yep.
I've written about that in the community space on Penpot, like community with the capital C. That's what matters. Otherwise, you don't have ownership, as you said. And the other challenge is that in the case of Penpot, we have a hybrid community because we have both developers and designers.
Cool.
That's not something you typically see.
Nope.
Communities are kind of a single colored, and we don't have that. We have kind of 50-50. We all know that the ratio between designers and developers worldwide is like developers 10-1. So
where did you get that stat?
It's there are some papers.
Oh, cool!
Some
Excellent.
papers saying that.
Yeah,
but also exciting. you can infer that information just looking at GitHub repositories, and then Figma reported design users, and you will see that typically that's 10 million, 100 million, 10 million.
Yep.
So there's consistency in that 10-1 ratio. And then you have your anecdotal evidence when working in teams where you basically see that, typically you have 10 developers per one full-time equivalent, designer. So you could have 5 and then, At Kaleidos, we have 1 to 2. So that's 1 designer per 2 developers, quite unique. Ideally, I think, 1 to 4 would be good. But what I mean by that is that there is already a massive power struggle.
Good.
Developers overrule the tech world, the product world.
Yeah.
So in our community, this is a open source design and prototyping tool. The main use case here is targeting designers.
Yeah.
And yet we are opening that. We're welcoming developers into the design process. 10-1, right? Let's not forget that. So how to manage that is a healthy, vibrant, just nice community where different people come from different backgrounds for their own reasons, like we have this gap and things, can cohabitate, and enjoy the fruits of different perspectives, working together. So it is very important for us at Kaleidos, and in particular with the product Penpot, to make sure that we build that community different stages, not just going for the numbers, but for the quality.
So that sounds lovely. It also sounds very abstract.
Yeah, like
how
would you open contributions for a designer? You know, how can a designer contribute?
Yep.
How can a designer how can I decide what should come in the next release?
Yep.
How a developer could counteract that in the community? Would there be some conflict of interest, or who gets full ownership? The one contributor that can commit, can send commits, or the one designer that can send prototypes. So that is, you don't typically see a hybrid community having conversations around the whole life cycle of the product. So we just don't want developers to overrun the community and make designers feel like they don't belong to that open source community, because there are not so many open source communities that are targeting designers.
Which is why you have a whole third team that's just community, right? Trying to focus on that.
But I mean, communities like products with great communities like Blender are a great example. Godot, also a great example. It's a video game, 3D rendering, video game. So we should be able to learn some of those of that stuff from them. How do you manage when you have contributors coming from the dev and the design, and how they can also work together, kind of speak in different languages, and still produce a valid outcome? So by the way, the other day I just thought that Blender and Godot and Penpod are all European projects.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Why is that?
Which actually leads on to my next question. What advice would you have for developer communities to welcome more designers, to make them more hybrid communities? How would you have designers have more say in general? You obviously have experience of building teams from the top down, but I'm curious for projects that are in the open source space that would like to have more designers and don't know how, and designers who want to get into projects and want to get suggestions. Do you have any sort of tips?
I think this question has been been asked a ton of times, and it had been addressed from a perspective perhaps not always the most
it's a
strategic.
Loose question. It's not a good question.
It's a good question, but typically it's how to make designers contribute to your open source project if you are a developer. I think that's the wrong perspective, or at least that's not the sole perspective. Thing is how to make sure that designers will own the product, will own the project. Not just how to make sure that documentation for contributions is nicely done so that designers can contribute. Like that would be like accessibility in terms of, I think you have to actually give away some of the power and some of the ownership to designers.
Does that mean commit rights? Does that mean merge access? Does that mean
not necessarily in terms of the Git repository, but in terms of the decision-making process?
Got it.
Otherwise, they will always be and will always feel second-class citizens in your project. Just people. So one step that I would, the way we did it at Kaleidos didn't have designers at the beginning back in 2011. We onboarded them. We understood and listened. We listened and understood the design process and all the cool science and evidence-backed theories that are there. And we said, okay, we trust the process. We trust the flow. We trust the people that understand that. We're going to give away willingly power. Instead of us developers making all the decisions, we're going to just trust all the people in the design space. And look where we are now. Penpod would not exist if we hadn't done that, right? Because Penpod is a need from the designers that were able to say, we need to build something like Penpod. And the rest would say, I think I get it. Yeah, let's do this. So my tip would be not just make contributions from designers easy, but actually welcome them as peers. Listen to the design process, listen to their ideas, and have them take front row seats at your governance model. Otherwise, it's they're going to just be at the fringes of the project. Just learn about the design process. I think people will be excited to know about that. The whole design process is super cool.
So the projects you mentioned are all pretty design focused, which is okay. That's fine. And governance is a word that's beginning to be used a lot more in open source communities, especially at open source program offices and conferences like here.
Yes.
Sometimes you see governance.md in projects. You're starting to see that more. What we don't see is the word power, which you just used.
Oh, you'll see me saying that word.
No, I'm glad you used it. I think it's the right word to use. What I'm curious about is when you talk about power for developers, do you have any words you could use to make it easy for them to understand what that means in terms of giving it up? Do you have any ways of making it easier for developers to figure out, oh, actually, I don't need to control that?
It's difficult without giving like some examples, but I think if you look at the open source communities as a whole,
yep.
As I said, I come from 1996 already. So why don't we have in open source end user, like massive end user products, right? Facing end users. We have databases, we have operating systems, we have libraries, we have frameworks.
There's a couple, but there's really not many.
No, yeah, I mean, of course.
But there's not many. You're right.
There's not many.
Yeah.
We're so proud about the internet being run, on top of open source.
All right.
Yeah, great, but that's hidden.
Yeah.
And in terms of end user, for productivity tools or whatever, there are not so many of them. And I think it's because we were so endogamic. Is that a term?
Sure.
Yeah. Endogamic, that we just built the things that we needed. And so the whole decision process was, we are the users, we are the contributors, we are the builders, we are the owners.
So stop scratching your own itch and start figuring out how the itch is universal.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. So, it's fine if you scratch your own itch. But if you're in this mindset where you think, hey, it's not just about myself, it's not about my tribe,
yep.
It's about the user. Whenever technology faces the user, whenever there's an interaction there, and as a user, I mean a non-tech user, a non-developer user, it's about design. It's about user interaction. And then design becomes key for you. So it's fine if you just develop yet another JavaScript framework, if that's your thing, because your user is a developer. It is basically you. You are the persona.
Yep.
But whenever that isn't the case, it's key that you bring on the designers to really build what you need to build.
Cool.
And that is giving away or sharing long-standing privilege and long-standing power. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You will end up making same decisions for the same personas, which might not be your target.
And you and your co-founder, I forgot her name.
Oh, no, we have 14 co-founders, yeah.
Excellent. So this worked. This ideology worked. You're still here today.
Yes.
You have a good team. It seems like you're working on a great product. So it's very realistic to do this.
Oh, yes.
Excellent. Yeah. That's heartening. And thank you so much for coming on. That's great. That's
thank you for having me.
Where can people learn more about your words and Penpot?
I think if they want, they can go and visit our website, the company. That's Kaleidos. That's in Kaleidoscope, kaleidos.net. And Penpot is penpot.app.
Cool.
And we have community.penpot.app, where they can already see, what the community is saying, high expectations of whatever we're building. But yeah, you want to just look at the product itself, or self-host it, which is quite unique for a design prototyping tool. Just go to penpot.app.
And is that a community with a lowercase c in the URL or uppercase c?
It's an uppercase. It's an uppercase community, and I think that's one of the first posts that I wrote. Like, what do we need to do to make sure that we build a capital C community here?
Awesome, Pablo. Thank you so much for coming on.
It was awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.